As we continue the story of Joseph, we're going to learn another lesson that Joseph himself had to learn, part of his origin story. And in this lesson, we're going to talk about the fact that Joseph had to learn to deal with waiting. Now, I don't really know if that's a normal superhero problem. Like, I don't really remember the comic book where Wolverine had to wait a long time. That'd be a really boring comic book, just, 30 pages of waiting, just sitting there, sitting in the doctor's office. But none of us like waiting, right? I mean, waiting stinks. I am a person that likes to be moving and likes to be doing stuff, and I hate waiting. Especially I grew up, I didn't have a cell phone when I grew up. I didn't have, certainly not a smartphone, but not even a cell phone. So when I had to wait at the dentist's office or the doctor's office, or even when I first started driving, I had to wait to get my oil changed. You literally just had to wait and do nothing and look at magazines that were 10 years old. And so waiting stinks. But God has decided that this is the next lesson that his people need to learn. That as God's people, we're not going to get instant gratification, and we need to learn to wait. Now, Joseph's already experienced some tough lessons. He's learned to deal with adversity. He's learned to deal with temptation. And now he learns how to experience waiting. And so let's dive back into Joseph's story and see how he deals with waiting as he languishes in prison. So let's go back to Genesis chapter 39. But while Joseph was there in the prison, the Lord was with him. He showed him kindness and granted him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. So the warden put Joseph in charge of all those held in the prison, and he was made responsible for all that was done there. You'll remember from where we left off in the story, Joseph is put in prison. That Potiphar's wife made accusations against him, and Potiphar couldn't side with Joseph. And so, because of the evidence and the testimony of his wife, they throw Joseph in prison. And there he has to wait. Joseph has lost everything again. The second time in his life, Joseph has lost everything. And what's Joseph's response? How does he handle it? Joseph never gets bitter over his circumstances. I think this is amazing. If I would have been Joseph, I would have been really mad. I would have wondered, God, why are you allowing this to happen? God, I already went through slavery. I already served you. I didn't give into the affair that I could have given into because I didn't want to dishonor you. And for all of that, what do I get? I'm in prison. And maybe you think that Joseph would have become bitter or angry. But what does he do? He continues to honor God. He continues to do things that are pleasing to God. And so he serves the warden and he serves the prisoners. And we find that Joseph has the integrity and loves God so much that he continues to work hard to honor God. And as a result, he's blessed. He's blessed during his time in prison, but he's still forced to wait. He has to play that long waiting game. Well, something else kind of interesting happens to Joseph while he's in prison. God gave Joseph the ability to interpret dreams. Now, you might remember from the first lesson that Joseph had some pretty strange dreams when he was a kid. Well, now, not only does he have strange dreams, but now he actually can interpret them. There are two important people in the prison, and those two men have dreams, and they're troubled by those dreams, and so they go to Joseph to figure out what they mean. Sometime later, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their master, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with his two officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the same prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, and he attended them. So you have these two guys, the cupbearer to the king. He's the guy that would taste all the king's food before he ate it to see if someone had poisoned the king. Pretty good job, right? And then you had the chief baker, who I guess he made all of the king's birthday cakes. But whatever the case, these two guys, they each have a dream, and their dreams trouble them. And so they tell Joseph the dreams, and Joseph says, hey, good news, cupbearer. Your dream means that the king of Egypt, the Pharaoh, he's gonna let you out of prison. He's gonna let you out of prison. You're gonna be out of here soon. And here's the deal. When you get out of prison, if it's not too much trouble, would you please go to Pharaoh and tell him I've been wrongly accused, I'm wrongly in prison, everybody loves me, I do a great job, God blesses me, and try and get him to let me out of prison. Then the chief baker's like, well, here's my dream, and he tells Joseph his dream. And Joseph, I'm sure, has kind of a different reaction because he's like, oh, well, your dream means you're about to be executed. And that's what happened. The two dreams, they played out just as the men had those dreams. They were fulfilled. The cupbearer was released, and he went again working for the king of Egypt. And the poor baker, he was executed. And so you might think, well, this is cool. Joseph had to go into prison, but maybe it wasn't that long, and he was released. But look and see what happened. Look what actually happened. The chief cupbearer, however, did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. Remember, Joseph had said, when you get before the king, tell him whom I am. Tell him that I can interpret dreams. But the cupbearer forgot. He forgot all about Joseph. Maybe he was happy to be reunited with his family or just happy to be free and to try and drink poison again. I don't know. But he forgot about Joseph. Well, how long did he forget? What we realize as we continue to read the Bible is that Joseph had to wait a long time. The cupbearer forgot about Joseph for a really long time. God kept Joseph in prison for 2 more years. For 2 more years, Joseph stayed in prison. There he was, not working for the king, not interpreting dreams, just kind of working for the warden, keeping prisoners happy, but again, no bitterness. Could you imagine that? I'd be so mad. I'd be so angry. I'd be, writing letters every day trying to get my freedom. But Joseph understood that this was God's timing. This was God's plan. For some reason, God wanted Joseph to learn to wait. And that's true for you and I, that God is going to teach us this very same truth. God makes us wait to learn to trust in his timing. You remember that we already said that God brings us through adversity so that when we experience tough times, we'll turn to God because he's our only hope. Well, God makes us wait so that we'll trust his plan. We each have a plan for our lives. Maybe you haven't really figured out what your plan is for your life. Maybe you don't know your plan for high school or college or after college. But at some point, you're going to start thinking of your future and planning your future, and you're going to think about the job you want to have or the school you're going to want to go to, and you'll start to think into the future. And then after college, you'll think about, well, not only the career you want to have, but do you want to get married? Do you want to have kids? All those things. We look towards the future as humans. It's natural. But God teaches us that we need to trust his plan. That if you're a Christian, God has a plan for your life. If you put your faith in Jesus for the forgiveness of your sins, God has got a tremendous plan for your life, but you need to trust in his timing. Maybe you feel stuck right now. You feel stuck at your school. Maybe you just kind of feel stuck because school's hard right now. The relationships you have with friends are hard right now. You don't seem like you're going anywhere. Maybe you kind of wish like life would just sort of move forward. Maybe your family feels stuck. Maybe your family's been in a really tough position for a long time. One of your parents has been out of work, money's been tight, and you just feel stuck. You feel like you can't really move forward with life. You just have the same old problems day after day, week after week. Understand, God has a plan for your life. God is not giving up on you. God is making you wait to trust in his timing. Let's look at this verse, Romans 8:28. And we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. This verse is such an encouragement because it teaches us that not only when we experience something bad in life, God's going to use it for good, but everything we experience, even times of waiting, even times where it just doesn't seem like we're moving forward. Even times, when I was in high school, I couldn't wait to be an adult. I couldn't wait to make my own decisions. Even when I was in college, I couldn't wait to really be a real adult and be done with college. And so sometimes we just feel like we have to wait. We're just kind of stuck. We just have to go through the motions of school and family. And yet God's got a plan for your life. God wants you to learn things. He wants you to learn to depend on him. He wants you to learn how to overcome temptation and many other lessons that Joseph learned and we need to learn. So here's what we need to do. When you're in a period of waiting where it just kind of feels like you're stuck, you need to admit that God's timing is better than your timing. God's got a plan for your life. Maybe if God pulled you out of that stuck situation, things would go really badly. Maybe there's a lot of unforeseen negative consequences. For example, like if God had just taken Joseph right out of jail 2 years earlier, maybe Joseph wouldn't have experienced all the great things that he's going to experience at the end of his story. We don't really know. God's plan, God's purposes are greater than our plans. He's greater. His purposes are greater than our purposes. So admit that God's plan's better than your plan. But also, while you wait, when I say that God teaches us to wait, it doesn't mean that you just sort of do nothing. You're like, well, here I am stuck in school, so I'm just gonna wait, and eventually God's gonna tell me, okay, do something with your life. That's not what I mean. Remember what Joseph did. He worked hard in prison. Joseph was blessed in prison. Everyone loved Joseph. The warden trusted him with everything. Joseph said, well, this is where I am. God's got me in this position. It must be for a reason. I'm going to honor God where I am with what I'm doing today. And so that's what you need to do too. As a Christian, you need to think about where God has placed you, and maybe he's put you in a period of waiting where you're just not going to really move forward in a lot of areas of your life, but honor God in everything you do, each moment. Figure out, how can I be a blessing to other people? And maybe God will just, when a moment you don't even see it coming, God will say, okay, it's time. The waiting period is done. The waiting period is over. Here's what I want you to do next. Because that's exactly what happened to Joseph. At the right time, God freed Joseph. What we see is that eventually Pharaoh had dreams too. And Pharaoh's dreams were really weird dreams about skinny cows that eat fat cows, and I don't got time to go into all that. I'd encourage you to read that on your own. But Pharaoh had these weird dreams, and he said, who can interpret my dreams? And everybody's like, we can't interpret your dreams, Pharaoh. They're crazy. And so eventually the cupbearer, he said, oh yeah, now I remember when I was in prison, there was a guy who told me about my dreams and told me what my dreams meant. And so Pharaoh says, get that young man. And they pull Joseph out of prison. They give him a bath, because you didn't get a lot of baths in prison back in those days. They, give him new clothes, have him shave, cut his hair, all that stuff. They bring him before Pharaoh. And he says, Pharaoh, here's what your dreams mean. Because God is the one who gave Joseph the ability to interpret dreams. It's not like he was born with that. It was a God-given gift. And he said, God has allowed me to understand your dream, and here's what it means. You're going to experience 7 years of great, wonderful time where crops are going to grow, and there's going to be plenty of food. But then after that, there's going to be a severe, significant famine, meaning that Egypt's not going to be able to grow food for a long time. And so Joseph said, as a result of this, you should be storing up and saving for the famine that's to come. And the Pharaoh, he hears this interpretation, he thinks about Joseph's plan, and he says, you're right, Joseph, and what better person to put this plan into action than you? And so he makes Joseph the second in command of all of Egypt. I mean, if you think about it, Joseph was the second in command in Potiphar's house, which is pretty cool. Potiphar was a rich guy. Now, Joseph is second in command in all of Egypt. And he has this powerful position. He gets married, he has sons, and he is, under Pharaoh, the most important person in all of Egypt, the most powerful country in the world. God had said, Joseph, your time of waiting is over, and God blessed him. But that's not the last lesson for Joseph. There is one more powerful lesson, maybe what I like to call his final exam, and it's what we're going to talk about next.